Yair, thank you so much for taking the time with me today. I'm excited to hear where you're at with AvoMD. You know, one of the things that interests me about you is that this company came out of a very personal experience for you. You're a physician, you came up against a specific challenge, and here you are trying to solve that with the company. So kind of walk me through that origin story.
So as a clinician at the point of care, I was in internal medicine residency, and I was with my patients, but struggling. And the reason that I was struggling is because there's really, when I'm trying to figure out what the right thing to do is for my patient, it wasn't really about figuring out what the likely diagnosis was. It's, okay, I got that. What are the next steps here? What am I supposed to do? And there's two parts to that. One part is the clinical aspect, and the second part of it is the workflow aspect. What am I supposed to do in the context of this hospital? In residency, I worked in 4 different hospitals, and so it's what's the workflow of each specific hospital and how that ties in. So I started taking little notes on an index card so that I would have it ready for me, these little algorithms. That helped. Took some pictures of those algorithms. I made it digital. Okay. That helped even more. And others wanted those digital copies of my index card, so I would share them with others. So it's a collaborative digital algorithm tool. Very, very low tech.
Okay.
And then as it continued forward, it's, hey, maybe there's a way of really taking this and allowing others to contribute to it too. I ended up doing an elective at the Department of Biomedical Informatics at Columbia. Met my co-founder, who in his spare time was actually building this solution. His name is PJ. And that's really how we came together and took it forward from there.
Help us understand, so for non-clinicians who are watching, just the volume of protocols and the sort of complexity of workflows that a doctor has to deal with during a shift.
There's patients coming in with all types of conditions, all types of problems, and it's the physician's responsibility to figure out, okay, what is it, what's going on, how do you coordinate care, and what's the right path to do, in addition to communicating effectively with the team in the hospital and with the patient. And so, it's not just in the inpatient setting, that's what I'm describing, this experience, it's also, of course, in the outpatient setting. But to talk about this inpatient experience, so when the patient's coming in, so you have to think, let's say the patient's coming in, they're having some wheezing and they are a smoker, and you're thinking, okay, maybe this is COPD, a chronic condition that is more common in smokers. And so they're coming in with this problem, there's a little bit of short of breath, and it's, okay, I'm trying to figure out what's the right medication and dosage, and do I need to consult pulmonology or not in the specific hospital, and what's the criteria to do that, and then to make sure that they get the appropriate discharge medications a little bit further, and figuring out, are they going to be covered by their insurance to get that actual medication. There's a lot of different aspects that come into play there.
And you're saying the workflows as to who you should call, which specialist, the insurance question, could be unique to the facility.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly. And so the clinical aspect is pretty similar throughout. It's any hospital you work in, it's going to be a pretty similar, oh, I think it's COPD, here's the drugs I need to give, here's the counseling I need to do. But depending on the patient's insurance, they're going to get a different discharge medication or a different set of medications. And depending on the hospital, you're going to consult a pulmonologist or not. You're going to admit the patient to the regular floors or to the ICU. Different hospitals have different workflows.
So what's the experience of AvoMD for the clinician? Is it a mobile app? Is it kind of embedded into their EHR? Kind of what's their experience like?
So yes and yes, depending on where the physician needs or where the clinician needs to access the help is where they can get it in the workflow.
Okay.
So if they are walking in the hallway towards a patient and want to quickly check, they can pull it up on their mobile phone, or let's say they're on patient number 3 and patient number 1's lab results come back, they can just quickly check it so that they can be in the frame of that context of the first patient, even though they're dealing with this third patient, to make sure that each one gets appropriate help. On the other side, it's like if you were with a patient and you're in the outpatient setting and you have your charts open and you need to access it and you want to populate a note, you're going to use it more on the desktop EHR integrated version.
Am I understanding this correctly, that this kind of strikes me as sort of like a checklist mentality? It makes me think of like Atul Gawande's book about the checklist manifesto, just this idea that to really to really understand the finer points of a complex process, you really have to have these these steps, marked out for you. Is that kind of part of the mentality?
Definitely part of the mentality. There is that workflow aspect where it's really almost checklist-like to make sure that you're not missing things. There's a second aspect to it too, which is, when I was in residency, I would often text my friends or text attendings, and, hey, what do you think about this? And they would write back. It was, what if I could have that kind of experience where it's a processing experience, almost like an executable program on the other side that's almost like a remote consult.
And how is that remote consult worked into the program?
So right now we're rule-based, meaning that, let's say there's steps in an algorithm, so that is worked in on the back end, but the back end is actually a no-code tool. So I like to frame us as the building blocks or Lego of clinical decision support, so that can be done by anyone. Those rules can be set up by any clinical expert.
Okay. So how has the market responded to AvoMD? What are some partnerships that you're excited about right now?
So we've partnered both with societies on the one side, and then hospital systems on the other side, academic hospitals, urgent cares, to be able to set up both our content library, which others can use, and to further explore the remote consult experience that the providers are having. So we have now 15 health systems that are using the software, 4 societies that are on board, and then we have also recently started partnering with pharmaceutical companies and medical device companies to be able to support those efforts, where we make a clear distinction between the content creation, which is purely in our content partners' hands, like the societies or the academic hospitals.
The protocols themselves.
The protocols themselves are not touched by the other side.
Okay.
The other side supports their distribution. So if their drugs are inherent inside of those guidelines, they're interested in that going out to others. And so, if they are the standard of care, they want people to know of the standard of care so they can support those efforts without contaminating the content.
It's interesting to me that you started this to really aid yourself at the bedside as a clinician, and yet there are these other downstream benefits where if a facility has this great protocol, now there's a way to disseminate that for others to share in that. So there's this sort of more macro benefit, right?
Exactly. And the progression of how it started is kind of like the progression that whole larger picture is taking. For me, it was like, okay, how can I help myself at the point of care? And then it's, how can I help my friends at the point of care? And then it's, how can I help the system at the point of care? And then the system is building this content for their providers to be able to have standardized care. And then it's, other systems are interested in that too. So then they buy those protocols and they can use it. And it's really, it's a collaboration of evidence-based care.
It's a beautiful journey of innovation, to start so personal and then to expand naturally and to find those concentric circles as you grow.
It is, and I think it's really credit to the champions that we've found in the medical community who are really so passionate about this, about evidence-based medicine and making it easier for docs to be able to actually access that and for other clinicians to access that, and then to be able to really drive this innovation forward.
Fascinating. Yair, thank you so much for taking the time to catch me up on where you're at. I know you guys are moving fast, and I'm excited to see kind of where you go next.
Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure.